Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another show. Today we're lucky enough to have on NBA ref Marc Davis. Mr. Davis, how are you doing today?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you, gentlemen, for inviting me on today.
Thanks for coming.
Of course, we really appreciate it. Mr. Davis here, he's refed it for 22 seasons. He's an alumni from St. Ignatius College Prep, which we love to hear. Also attended the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Just a little background. Marc Davis has officiated 1,279 regular season games over 22 seasons as an NBA official. He's worked 132 playoff games, 12 finals, and also helped officiate in 2014 in the All-Star Weekend in New Orleans, as well as this year's 2020 All-Star Weekend in Chicago. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Probably my greatest accomplishment is probably being an alumnus of St. Ignatius College Prep, AMDG, right?
Oh, yeah, AMDG.
Yes.
Love to hear it. So I'll start it off. So
Okay.
what was your experience like as Navy as a two-sport athlete?
Well, I went there then I went to Navy's prep school, Navy Prep in Newport, Rhode Island, as a basketball player. There, my first roommate was a lacrosse player, so that's probably, I believe that was the first time I'd ever seen a lacrosse stick before. And so I was a basketball player, but I had a lacrosse player as a roommate, and we always engaged and were able to just start tossing the ball around and found it to be interesting. Played basketball my freshman year at the Naval Academy, as well as my sophomore year. At the end of my sophomore year, I played lacrosse as well. And then just my junior year, I just played lacrosse. So it was a phenomenal opportunity and a phenomenal experience. I enjoyed the games are so very similar. They appear to be different, but they really are very similar in terms of spacing, zone defense, man down is pretty much just help defense in basketball. So it was not a very difficult transition from that perspective. I obviously just starting. I spent the majority of my first year just in the racquetball courts, banging up against the wall, learning how to catch, learning how to play. I only played defensive midfield and I faced off. So my engagement in the games was somewhat limited. The opportunities I did get to, we actually had one of the more proficient face-off guys in college at the time. And so I got a few opportunities a game, and I got the ball or got it to my teammate as quickly as possible, and then was told to sprint off the floor, sprint off the court. I did play a little bit of man down, and I was pretty good in one-on-one defense because I was used to sliding my feet, moving my feet. I had a lot of foot speed, quickness, and I was strong. So I was able to do that. Once I got the ball, same thing, get it to somebody else, sprint off. So that was about the extent of my lacrosse experience. Although I will say the biggest thing was it was just like my basketball teammates, my lacrosse teammates were phenomenal young men, a real esprit de corps. Lacrosse is a very social sport, a very physical sport, very fast sport, just like basketball. So it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy watching the game to this day. Yeah, but being in Chicago and growing up in the city in 1987, there was no lacrosse in the state of Illinois, definitely not in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, that's hard to believe now since it's so big. It's coming along.
I know.
The whole Catholic League is getting pretty good at lacrosse.
Yeah, and then just I think it's a sport that you can begin early. It's a sport that allows. I don't know. It'd be interesting to ask you guys. I never played hockey, but even watching hockey, I find it to be more like maybe I'm only able to look at it through the lens of basketball, but it still just appears to be other than the crease and behind the net, it still seems to me to be more similar to basketball than to hockey. But like I said, I know you played hockey. I never played hockey, so I I don't know. Be interested in you guys' take on that.
Yeah, actually, I'm not a lacrosse player, so I don't know,
Yeah.
but Robbie definitely would know that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say that it is more comparable to basketball than hockey. I played 4 years of AAU going into my freshman year
Mhm.
with the Lakers, and after with playing basketball from the fall to the spring, and then playing lacrosse in the spring and the summer and a little bit of the fall, I'm able to keep my body in the right shape that I need to be in for both sports.
Mhm.
So I would agree with you on that. That
Yeah.
I see a little more basketball
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
I see hockey resemblance.
Mhm.
But all right. So keeping on track with your high school career here. Now we noticed that after doing some research, we noticed that Ignatius wasn't very strong at basketball during your time, but we found an article from the Chicago Tribune
Oh,
mentioning
wow.
you dropping 21 points against Gordon Tech, now known as DePaul Prep. But I know that during your time at Ignatius, success was hard to come by. But is there a moment or a game that you will never forget?
There's so many, but that game in particular was a very good game. On my final game at Ignatius, we lost to De La Salle by 8 points in the regional, and I think I had 35 points in that game. So that game really stands out more from the perspective of the sadness. I mean, to be with the guys for 4 years, that close relationship with Coach Keogh and the gentleman that I played with, just kind of the ending of that would be a game that was very bittersweet, one that I'll never forget. Homecoming of that year was another big victory. We didn't have a lot, but we had some seminal ones. We won the Jesuit Cup 2 or 3 years that I played there. We played on the varsity team. We won our homecoming our senior year. We beat Gordon Tech in a big game that year. So we had some moments that were worth remembering, and but more of the experience and the camaraderie of being a student athlete at Ignatius was probably my one of my greater achievements, and probably the most impactful, one of the more impactful things that I've been involved with in my life.
Yeah, no, I know that last year saying goodbye to my brothers on the lacrosse field, and I was lucky enough to have a year of managing basketball.
Yeah.
So goodbye to all those friendships, because there are kind of guys on both teams who I really haven't reached out to since our last game, and that's a bummer because I've got a
Yeah.
great relationship with them. But yeah, no,
Yeah, life moves on. Life moves on, but but friendships don't. They stay right where they are, and you'll run into somebody, 2 months from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, and it'll be just like yesterday in terms of your dealings with them. Those kind of connections generally have a profound effect and an engagement that it doesn't take much to reignite them. So be encouraged. But one thing I will say about our team at Ignatius, we were very small, very small. You guys know some. I mean, I know Emmett knows some of the names out.
Oh yeah,
We started. I mean, Matt Burke,
Matt
myself,
Burke, yeah.
Pat Doherty, Dana Williams was our tallest player. He was maybe 6'2", 6'2", 6'3", and then Peter Thompson, who was 6'2" at the time. And so we were not very big. And at that time, the Catholic League was uber competitive in basketball. There were probably at minimum 20 Division I basketball players from my senior year from the Catholic League. So very, very competitive.
Yeah, and it still is
league.
today.
Yeah, very,
It's a great
very
league.
competitive. But
Yeah.
Mr. Keogh, I don't know if was Rich Keogh ever.
He was there our I want to say freshman and maybe sophomore year.
Yeah.
But I know McKenna Keogh Court. I've heard a lot of stories.
Yes. Yeah, that was so. But Coach Keogh went back and reconfigured our senior year, taking into account the 3-point line. We did not have the 3-point line there. It came 2 years afterwards, And he went back through all of our games and looked at the video and reconfigured what we would have scored had there been a 3-point line. And I think our record like completely flip-flopped. It went to we were something like 12-15. It went to like 20-7. We were just at the wrong time. We were ready. With the space and pace, we would have really, really been a much better team. There's no telling what would have happened.
Yeah, that's the same thing my dad says when he's playing on the sophomore team because he's 5'8" and he's a shooter.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just before our time. We were just, man, if there had been a 3-point line, we would have been dangerous. So who knows what would have happened. But that did not happen, and so we were whatever we were, and that's what it is. But every year we had a few more victories and take away a couple losses, and I'm sure by 2030 we'll be 32-1.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I know relationships at Ignatius are really important. I know Elijah was just a senior. What was your favorite moment from his senior year? And do you believe in the way the program is heading? Because they had a great year. And is Noah playing as well? And are you looking forward for him to start stepping up?
Yeah, I am. I would say there's so many moments that I'm proud of about their senior year. You know, they had a difficult junior year. The team didn't do as well as they would have liked to. And I'm just more proud of the group of seniors, Elijah and Danny and Elijah W. and Josh and Luke Collins and Declan Callahan, even in the summertime. And I know I'm forgetting someone. I know I am.
You got Derek. You got all of them.
Oh, yeah, Little G. Dingens. Yeah, all of them. And particularly, all of them had a way, even though Declan ended up not playing and focusing more on football in the senior year. That spring, they really spent a lot of time together and in that summer, spent a lot of time soul searching, working on a lot of personal development, working on a lot of teamwork, doing a lot of things outside the scope of what you would expect a high school team to do. They dealt with a lot of issues and problems that they didn't want to see in their senior year, and a lot of personal development. I was able to be involved with them through one of my Navy classmates, who's a former Navy SEAL, Errol Doblin. He came to town and we did some leadership development with them. We did some really crazy out of comfort zone activities that they were able to draw on during the year. So I was really proud of them. I was proud of how adversity never stopped them. They had not experienced a lot of success, but they envisioned success. And I think that's consistent with Coach Matt's philosophy and the program that he's building there. It's just one step at a time. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Keep working on yourself. Keep working on each other. And I really, really think the program has turned the corner, and we're going to see some very, very special things that Elijah's class has begun that I think are going to culminate in Noah's class, not only this year, but next year. Parker Higginbotham, they've got some really good, some strong senior leaders coming on next year. And so I'm excited. And I believe wholly in Coach Matt's program. I see a lot of basketball. I see a lot of basketball from a very objective opinion because the majority of the basketball I watch, I am not remotely rooting for who wins. And so I'm able to see it and identify it. And Matt is strategically a very, very sound coach. And the program and the correct usage of analytics for development is something that they're using. And I see how in depth and involved he is with the scouting reports and how he's able to translate that into his players. I think that both he and the program are really hitting their stride, and I'm really looking forward to big things in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was able actually to come home for their last game this season against DePaul.
I know.
That was awesome.
Which is a great story. I was unfortunately unable to be there, but through technology and the huddle camera, I made sure that was the night that the season was suspended.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting dynamic. I had walked over to the arena early because I was on the West Coast, and I set up my computer, my iPad, set it up so I could watch. So I watched that entire game from start to finish, and we had the security personnel in our locker room getting ready to do our brief, and they saw the final shot. And I wish I would have had a video, because they had been coming in because I got there early, had been coming in, watching the game and asking me to score, and I was screaming over my shoulder, we're up 4, we're down 2. So by the time Danny hit that last shot, there were like 6 NBA security reps in the room, and the room just exploded. So I know it didn't explode like Tully Hall exploded or like McKenna Keough Court exploded that night, but we were rooting hard for the Wolfpack that night. And that was a very, I think that game more than anything I think seniors lead the way. And I think if you look to 2 weeks before, I mean, we got crushed by DePaul.
Yeah.
DePaul had a phenomenal season, and we got crushed. I mean, I think it was over before it started. I think we were down 23-4 or something. It was just, they jumped on us and we just never got it. But they never wavered. They just went right back to work, put their head down. So all the things that we worked on developmentally, and Coach Matt worked on developmentally and emotionally, I mean, the magic of the team, really came through. And at the end, in that game, I had no doubt we were going to get that team. And so that was so I'm so many things to be proud of, and just the resiliency, and we were going to get that next one. This was our year. I know this is our year, but unfortunate circumstances didn't allow for that. But only 16 teams won their last game. We're one of them.
Oh yeah,
that's a win.
Maybe 8. I don't know. What was it? Were we down to 8 yet?
We might have been. No, it was 16. It was 16 because they weren't.
About to be the final. It was about to be the sectional final. If they would have faced Fenwick, that would have been the sectional final to put them in the super section.
Oh yeah, That was another game. Very proud of to see how we went into Fenwick and the way we played with a little bit of injury, and just showed that the whole, the strength of the Wolf is the pack.
Oh yeah.
And they really teamed up and played really phenomenal team defense that game, and a lot of help defense. And they have 2 really special players on Fenwick, but we were able to, collectively, we were able to defend that game really well in Fenwick, which is a very difficult place to play. And I believe they had maybe only had 1 loss prior to that. So we had some really big wins, and it was a great season. Great season.
It really was.
I would tell you this, guys. I watched so many games, and I know it's a difficult concept to understand, and people don't understand it. But NBA referees do not root for teams. We really have, as passionate as we are about it. If there are 1,230 games a season, I referee my 70 to 80 games. I probably watch easily another 300 to 400 games, and probably take snippets of probably most every game at some point. I watch the highlights or a few plays, and that's a great feeling, and being able to objectively look at it. But there's nothing like watching a game when you really are rooting for somebody. I just love. I mean, the Wolfpack are my team, and I mean, I live for those games, and that's in all sports, but in all the sports. I mean, I was there at field hockey, girls lacrosse.
Oh, I remember seeing you there.
I'm just as maniacal at those two. I love me some Wolfpack, and so watching games and watching basketball from that perspective, I really enjoy it, and that kind of goes to our fans and our teams. And I know you had a question earlier when we were preparing about the contentiousness on the floor, maybe the way it appears. Mm-hmm. It really is not that contentious. It's just passionate people, hyper-competitive athletes, type A personalities, uber competitive in that environment where emotions are split reaction easily. They come right out, and it usually it works itself out really well. And then after the games, they're not as they're it's just, you're just part of the game and part of what's going on. So I know it's easy for the media to make that a big issue, like the referees and the players don't get along. I mean, that's just not really the case. There are some contentious moments, but look, there's times when players don't get along with each other when they're competing, and you move on and you go to the next. Everybody's got a job to do, and that's kind of the way a really strong officiating, robust officiating program like ours deals with it. We just deal with what's in front of us, try and deal with it in a way to get the players back on focus, back towards what they're supposed to do, and back to being the phenomenal athletes that they are.
Yeah, for sure. You know,
Now,
you saw it a lot in the Last Dance documentary, and people are like, well, you know, Jordan was mean. No, he's just really competitive. And I feel like that's a lot of people in the NBA. They're just very competitive.
Look, in any successful organization, any successful team, they're going to be hyper competitive individuals. Generally, the culture is hyper competitive. The NBA is phenomenally uber competitive from every single team to every single player. There are no scrubs in the NBA, period.
Yeah.
Everybody was a superstar where they were before. And everybody, and now you add on the added thing of this is their livelihood. So none of that surprised me. It's to be this driven, to be this successful. I mean, you couldn't take the R&B top 20, take the Billboard top 15. Every one of those musicians is hyper competitive.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, look at the Grammys. Nobody gets nominated for a Grammy that's not hyper competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gets nominated for an Emmy. Nobel Peace Prize winners, Nobel laureates are hyper competitive. They have a zeal and a will to succeed, and that's just consistent in the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure.
I believe that the most successful people in life are the hungriest people in life too. They always want more for themselves and the people around them. But
yeah, that's consistent. That is a consistent thing.
Let's keep it going here with now as living in Chicago. You know, Chicago, we have the Bulls. Now, does that mean that since you are from Chicago and you're still in Chicago, does that mean you're reffing more Bulls games than other teams' games, or how does that work?
No, you know, there's 70 NBA referees and we work all the games. Like I said, there's 1,230 games, so there's 3,690 assignments. And in theory, I will work no more in Chicago than I will in Portland. And we are the 70 officials that service that league. And I might have Chicago and Orlando. I might have Chicago in Chicago, and I might have Portland and Denver. I might have Denver and Portland. They're all the same thing. And so generally speaking, because I live in Chicago, I don't think there's ever been a year where I did not have a Chicago game, but that's more a function of logistics and me being able to be home and work a game or being available if someone else wasn't able to. So that streak or the fact that I've done that is no bearing on the schedule. We generally don't work. We work each team about the same amount of times, and you generally go to each city about the same amount of times. Yeah, divided equally.
Yeah, I feel like that would make sense because, you know, they're trying to, you know, as you said, it's just kind of a union and you go where you're signed and nothing more than that. But so
nothing more than that.
Yeah. So is it hard dealing with criticism? Like you said, the media makes it look different. Is it hard to deal with that? Because, you know, if you're an NBA ref, you can look yourself up and find all these ratings. Do you look at those or no?
No, I don't engage in that at all. To be quite honest, the criticism or dealing with criticism, I think there's different types of criticism. I think to really be successful as an official or really in anything, but particularly in officiating, speak to, is you have to be self-critical, and you have to be your own most severe critic, and you also have to be your own most fervent cheerleader, because there's no time to wallow on the mistakes. It's just time to learn from them and move on. So generally speaking, there is not a game that I haven't worked that I haven't gone back and watched at least some portion of the video to see what mistakes I've made, what I have done, what I haven't done. We have I would guess a coaching staff, if you will, that we're managed by. that are constantly feeding us information on mistakes or asking us we have handled this differently? Could we have looked at it that differently? So complaints or criticism from the media, that does not really affect look, they're never going to clap. I've been refereeing for a long time. They've never clapped for me one time, nor have I ever been looking to get clapped for. So that doesn't make it very frustrating when they don't clap for you, because they're never going to clap. And if you're not looking for clap, then you don't have to worry about it. I'm really looking for it more from a perspective of self-satisfaction and objective satisfaction of what my supervisors and what the managers and what the participants feel about my performance relative to, is it fair? Because that's my job, is to equitably articulate and enforce the rules as they're written. And officials do not write the rules. We have a rules and competition committee that's very robust in looking at problem areas, identifying areas in the rule that need to be changed, and a re-emphasis or re-education for all the constituents, not just the officials, but the players, our announcers, our coaches. When a rule is changed or there's a rule that's being emphasized, the league makes sure to reach out to all of those partners to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So it makes no sense and I think it's genius really for them to change a rule only tell the officials, and then the players find out it for the first time when you make that decision. The Players Association is involved in those decisions. They're engaged to help make those decisions. Our broadcast partners are informed of those decisions, so when they happen, no one's being surprised. Clearly, our coaches, our general manager, our owners are all engaged and all involved in that process. So there are no secrets. There should be no surprises. So criticism, not really. And I generally have a personal philosophy to not accept criticism from someone I could not get advice from. Yeah. And so I just kind of keep it right there.
I like that a lot, actually. That's nice. But I'm gonna go with my final question here now.
Sure.
As we know, you've been in the league for 22 seasons, and you've had a tremendous career there. Now, how has the way you've reffed games changed from season 1 to season 22? What's the difference between that? How has the game kind of evolved or changed?
Well, the game has definitely evolved and changed to the positive. I mean, the skill level of our players is so high, and they work on their game so much. And the same thing doesn't work twice, and they're always evolving, always engaging, always finding new moves, new strategies, new things. And quite frankly, they're the best of the best. So the things that you physically see them doing on the floor that you don't see that in a 6th grade game.
Yeah.
You don't see that. You don't see, a 7-foot player taking off from the 28-foot mark. 1.5 steps, and he gets there, and that seems physically impossible because, at the Barnabas Christ the King game, it didn't happen because they can't do that. And so that's the one thing. But I would say the game has evolved because now it's much more skillful. The flow, the flow, and the floor is open so much more because that has made for a more competitive and entertaining game. So with the advent of when I first came in the league, of the advent of the hand check, to now where we've actually already evolved now to the point where we're not allowing offensive players to use their hands, and it's an equal distribution of contact that can be created so that you don't gain an advantage, but you're not put in a advantageous position as well. So the flow of the game, I would say, and freedom of movement, I would say, is probably the best way to articulate that. The freedom of movement, there's been a greater emphasis on freedom of movement in the league in the last 22 years. And I think much to the benefit of our league. And that's why I think we have such a beautiful game. And I think that's why we're on pace to be America's sport sometime in the near future. Definitely going to be the world sport. We're growing faster than soccer. We're going faster all around the world because our game is so beautiful. And
you see a lot of
so
these
athletic.
players, coming from Europe, like, and they're really getting into the way the NBA is playing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because as you guys are more adept at this than I am. With the advent of technology, you can be in Slovenia and you can know who the top 4 high school basketball players in Illinois are and be able to see their games. And the same thing, a kid from Kansas could have seen, could have watched the Euro Championships, could have seen the top 19 and under team in the World Championships. So the world is so small, and with that, there's more collaboration. I think people feed off of moves and different strategies that other players have used, and that world is so small now that I think it's really intensifying and increasing the skill level, and the level of skill is increasing at a much more rapid pace, because as soon as someone does something, someone else does a little better. It's just like, Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile, before he did it, thought it was impossible. And then once he did it, I think it was like 86 people did it in the next 365 years because they knew it was possible. Once one of our players does something, be it in Slovenia, be it in Lithuania, be it in Oakland, be it in Compton, be it in New York City, players all over the world see it. And that becomes the new norm. And so I'm excited to see where it's going next, but it's definitely going up.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Well, that's all the questions I got, and that was really cool. Thank you a lot. We'll look inside the NBA. That was great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. Congratulations.